Alright, in this video we're going to go over 3 different types of government actions in markets. That'll be the price ceiling, price floors, and production quotas. So let's start with price ceiling. So price ceiling is kind of like a cap on the price of a good. So an example could be like rent. You can't so like the sellers can't charge more than like, I don't know, like let's say rent can't be greater than $3,000 a month. So normally, if the market equilibrium is the exact same, if the market equilibrium is less than the cap, then nothing happens. Like let me just draw a diagram right here. So let's say this is the market equilibrium and this is the price ceiling. If the price ceiling is over the equilibrium, then that means the cap is over the equilibrium. So everything below is legal, everything above is not. So because the equilibrium is below the market price, then it's still alright, nothing happens. But if it happens like this, if the price ceiling is lower than the ceiling, the price ceiling, then it's in the illegal range, and because everything below the price ceiling is legal. So what happens here is that this is the supply curve and demand curve. Another way to write the supply and demand curve is the marginal cost for supply and marginal benefit for demand. And it's kind of like a slope, so it's continuous, and the marginal cost and benefit is how much benefit or cost it is to make one more or buy one more of a certain good or service. So what happens here is that the marginal benefit exceeds the marginal cost. So there's like a greater demand than supply. So what happens here is there's a shortage. And because the supply can't go further than this, then the only thing that could change is the demand. So because the supply is limited and there is a greater demand than supply, the demand only a certain amount of demand could take up the supply, and that is the same amount as the quantity produced. So this is the x-axis is quantity, and the y value is the price. So the amount of supplied here is used up by the amount demanded here. Meanwhile, the extra space over here, the shortage, the excess amount of people that demand the good will have to go to other places as well, and this will result in like increased activity time to search, and that wastes resources. And also there's also black markets. These are illegal markets that sell goods that aren't that don't run with the whole price ceiling that the government sets. So what happens here is that it creates an empty space, this triangle over here, and that is the deadweight loss. We'll simplify as DWL for short, and that is the amount wasted from this, and that's the amount of resources or potential wasted from this price ceiling. This is an inefficient scenario. Alright, the next scenario we're going to go over in this video is price floors. So price floors is kind of like a minimum. It's a minimum amount of money that the government sets. So the company can't pay its workers any less than this. For example, like minimum wage, but it could go anything above. So like the price ceiling, there's if the market if there's a safe zone and an unsafe zone for the market equilibrium. In this case, if the market equilibrium is above the price floor, then nothing happens, because anything above the price floor is legal, but anything below it is illegal. While in this case, if the market equilibrium is less than the price ceiling, then this is where issues rise, because everything under the price ceiling, anything under the price floor is illegal, while everything above is. So what happens here is that there's a greater supply than demand. Let's label the graphs here again. And what happens here is that it's a surplus. So this means that there is a greater marginal cost and a greater benefit. What this means is that the company is wasting more resources. So what they eventually do is that they slide back the production to meet up with the amount demanded, because in terms of marginal cost, the company won't spend as much money in production if they don't get back enough goods. If they don't get back enough money for the goods that they produce, and what the demand curve, the marginal benefit curve, does, when they pay for the goods, they give the money back to the company. So if there's less money coming in from the less demand, then the production cuts back a bit. So what we have here is now, compared to the regular equilibrium, there's this distance over here that has no production, and what we have here is another triangle, and in this area is called the dead weight loss, and it's because the amount of quantity of goods or services decreased because of the price floor. So this area is wasted because of the decrease in demand, which leads to a decrease in production, which leads to a decrease in quantity. So in this case, the price floor is limiting the limiting the producer's ability to produce more. Also, I don't think I said this before, but the reason why the price goes up is because it's the price floor. So so that's the minimum it could be. So if it's below it, it has to go up, and that's when the 2 points split apart. Because if it's in equilibrium, they're basically on top of one another. But when they but other than that, they are two separate points on two separate graphs. All right, the last one we're going to talk about is production quotas. So maximum amount of this is the maximum amount of a good or service that the government allows a company to produce. So if the production quota is greater than the amount that the company produced in their market equilibrium, then nothing happens, because anything over here is safe, but anything here is illegal. But like the other two examples we showed, if the production quota is less than the market equilibrium, which is the amount that the company produces and the buyers sell, here's where we run into an issue. Because the company cannot produce more than the production quota, the supply has to decrease down to here. And when the supply decreases, then only part of the people that demand the good could be able to get that good, because there's not enough to share for everyone. So the demand decreases as well. And what we have here is a dead weight loss. This is the resources that are this is the revenue and the value that's decreased because of the restriction. And for the rest of the people that didn't get the good from the company, there's like this part of the graph, they like what happens in price ceilings, they either have to spend more resources finding the goods, or they go to black markets to get the goods. Let's apply some of the stuff from the previous video, the efficiency and fairness of markets, into this video. So let's just start with the production quota case. So if you recall, the consumer surplus is the amount of money that is saved by a person buying the goods. Because let's say they are willing to buy this lamp for $20, but instead the price is $10. So they save $10 on the purchase, because they save potentially $10 on the purchase, and that's what consumer surplus is. And producer surplus is they would sell, let's say they sell this lamp for $10, but they produce it for $2, and that'll be like around here. Initially they'll produce it for $2, and what happens is that they save potentially $8 from production. But as you can see on the supply graph, the more they produce, the more it costs. While in the demand, the more goods there are, the lower the price each of it becomes. So normally, let's take a look over here. The consumer surplus and the producer surplus end up splitting over here because this is how much they save, while this is how much the producers save, and eventually it diminishes until it reaches the equilibrium, where they pay for what they're willing, where they actually pay for what they're willing to pay. So what happens here is this is a consumer surplus, and this is a producer surplus. So what happens here is that because the quantity demand is now up here and the quantity supplied is now down here instead of in the middle. So what happens here is that that's what's actually being saved because it is now at a higher price also because there's less supply as well. So the goods are being bought will now have a higher supply. So the goods are being bought will now have a higher price. So instead of the lamp being $10, it's now 15 because there's less of it. So if I was still willing to pay for $20, I'll end up just saving $5 instead of 10. If I bought it for $15 instead of $10. The demand is up here, and with the smaller supply, then the price is a lot bigger. And when the price is a lot bigger, like let's say that this is the same example. The price is $15, while the producer sells it for $2 over here. The producer now saves $13 instead of 8. So now the producer gets a lot more value. Let's take a look at it from both ways. Are the rules fair? Well, the rules are fair if there's like voluntary trading and then they own property rights. But because it's a production quota, it limits the producers from producing as much as they want, which is the market equilibrium, and it limits the buyers from buying. It limits the buyers over here, the ones that got cut off, from buying what they want. So it's not fair because it inhibits voluntary trading. Now let's take a look at the results. Are the results fair? Well, you can see here the producer surplus is gaining a lot more than the consumer surplus. So the producers are gaining while the consumers are losing. So in this case, the results are not fair. So the producers gain while the consumers lose. But in the case of results, it's all the results care about is the amount of money at the end. So, well, in the case of the results, it just comes down to the money at the end. So if the consumers are richer than the producers, that means that the consumers are losing money while the producers are gaining money. So in that case, it's alright according to the results. But so this is kind of like a mix. So let's go over what the consumer and producer surplus look like in price floors and price ceilings. So let's take a look at this price ceiling. Because this is a cap, everything under it is legal, while everything above is illegal. So what we have here is that the market equilibrium is above the price ceiling. So I drew some couple of points to show where the values are. So because this is the cap, then the values over here have to split, so the quantity demand decrease. So the quantity supply decreases and the quantity demand increases. And because there's less supply, there's only less. There's not. Because there's the quantity supplied. Because the quantity supplied decreases, there's not enough to give to everyone that demands. So only people that demanded the goods that actually got the goods or services are the ones over here, while the rest over here didn't. So what happens here is that the consumer surplus, because this is the only people that actually demanded for it, the consumer surplus ends up shrinking, because normally it would be this entire triangle, while producer surplus would be only this. And in this case, the producer surplus decreases as well, because there's a smaller amount produced. And as I said before, this part over here where they decrease the amount of quantity demanded, that is wasted. That is restricted because of the ceiling. So there's a deadweight loss there. And this area over here, this area is to make up for the lost area over here. So what this rectangle here, that is the amount of effort and resources spent by these people that did not get the good from this company. They use this is the resources that they use. This shows the amount of effort and resources they use in trying to find an alternative, or the money that they spent in black markets. So it's the increased search activity and black markets. So we can see that the consumer surplus and the producer surplus are decreased because of this. Now let's take a look at the price floor. So the price floor, if the price floor is above, that means everything above is legal while everything below is legal. Everything below is illegal, which includes the market equilibrium. So what happens here is that the demand decreases while supply increases. Because the demand is less, the money the company receives is less. So the supply eventually cuts back to produce as much as the demand is produced. And what happens here is that it creates a deadweight loss because of the decrease in production. So this is the deadweight loss. While the amount demanded the decrease in the amount demanded causes a decrease in the consumer surplus because people are buying less of the good, while because there's less money coming in, there's less of a producer surplus. And this rectangle here is the increase in search activity and um, looking in black markets for an alternative.